So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is part 3 of a 6-part webinar series that I put together for real estate agents to assist during this pandemic. We're doing everything virtually with the webinars, and they've been very well attended. We've been recording all of them. This one will also be recorded and available on my website and on my YouTube channel. And we'll also make a podcast out of it. So if you have any colleagues or friends who weren't able to log on today, let them know, no problem. This will be up and running. Maybe not today, but within the next day or two, so others can see it. So for part 3, we are going to tackle real estate and technology. The title of the webinar is From Cybersecurity to Essential Resource Websites. I put this together about a year ago because first of all, cybersecurity is so critical in our industry. We are targeted, and Matt's going to talk a lot about that today. But as agents, unfortunately, you are targeted too because we are targeted. They're not necessarily after you. They're always after one thing. They're after the money. And in real estate deals, money gets moved around. So keep that in mind as we go through this. I'm also going to go through and talk about a number of incredibly helpful websites that are out there that I utilize on a daily basis to do my job as a real estate attorney. And there are many of them which you also as an agent can utilize, which will help you and also help your customers. It really will set you apart from others because there's just so much information out there that wasn't readily available, whereas years ago, we might have needed to do a title search or write a long letter to get our response. We can just touch a couple buttons if we know what we're doing and get almost all the information that we really need. So I want to introduce Matt Cohen. Matt is an attorney. I've been an attorney, first of all, for 25 years, and I only do real estate work. I know most of you. And my office is in Shrewsbury. I live in Manaloking. I work up and down the coast, only doing real estate. I do focus on waterfront properties in flood zones, especially post-Sandy. That's become a big part of my practice. But I do all real estate, commercial, landlord-tenant, but mostly transactional work, a lot of residential and high-end. I met Matt years ago. I was involved with the State Bar Association and the County Bar Association. I've been chairing the County Bar Association section for probably about 15 years, and up at the state, I'm now retired as the past chair. Matt has been on both of those committees, and he surprisingly, because you can see how youthful and handsome he is, he's been an attorney probably 5 years longer than I have, so maybe about 30 years. But welcome, Matt. Matt was in private practice for a number of years, and he's been running Two Rivers Title for 10, 15, how long, Matt?
17 years.
17 years. So I'm
actually 18 years.
Yes. So Matt, I invited Matt today because Matt and I have done so many seminars together, mostly lecturing to attorneys. So today is going to be tailored for real estate agents, but honestly, it's the same message. And the message is that there are bad guys out there that are out to get us, and we have to do everything we can to protect ourselves. So I'll turn it over to Matt. Matt, if you want to tell them anything else about yourself. And Matt actually told me before this meeting that just recently he encountered a very unusual, or not unusual, but a fraud attempt, which he thinks would be very helpful in explaining all the risks that are out there and things we could do to help ourselves. So I'll turn it over to you, Matt.
Okay, thank you. Glad to be here. A little bit more about my background. As Brad pointed out, yes, I've been doing this for 30 years. Half that time as an attorney and now as a title agency. Because we operate in 5 states and we're subject to different regulations in all 5 states, we have extensive cybersecurity policies in place. We have an inside IT department with 2 full-time people. We use an outside company that monitors our email systems, our websites, our phone systems, everything to make sure that data can't be transmitted without our authorization. But despite all that, we get fraud attempts on our company almost every day, sometimes several times a day. And some of these are pretty sophisticated. Right now, I'm just going to show you the real background that I have, right, is, if I choose none, how do I do that? You can see that I am working from home today. What does that mean? It means that across the country in the last 90 days, fraud has increased almost 550% on law firms and title agencies and real estate agents.
Wow.
This is where the big money is. And I'm going to try not to be Mr. Doom and Gloom today, but the bottom line is you have to figure out where the pain points are. Whose email system isn't secure? Is it your clients? Is it yours? Is it the lenders? Is it your attorneys? And you may never know. So you have to hide your information behind firewalls, but you also have to be very careful about what you do just when you're responding to one of your clients. And I'll give you a good story, which happened to me personally a few days ago on Thursday. And I almost did the wrong thing. And my staff is trained. If you get an email with an attachment or a link, the first thing you do is you pick up the phone and you call the other side. Did you just send this to me? And it seems like that's just a pain. You always, every time you get an email with an attachment, you're supposed to call. Well, yes, unless you were expecting that document from that person at that time, because what they're trying to do is implant a virus with a document that may look innocuous. So you'll never know unless you have good software running in the background on your home PC or on your phone. They may try to lock you out of your system. You've all heard about ransomware. Or they may try to delete and steal your data and say, if you want us to return it to you, you have to pay ransom. What they were trying to, I don't know what they were trying to do for me, and this is a real story. A major city here in New Jersey, because we do government work as part of Two Rivers Title's normal business operations. It's about 20% of what we do. So I got an email from the purchasing agent for a city we've done some work for before, but not in a few years. And they asked if we were still interested in doing the work. And, you know, because they were moving fast on a few projects due to the pandemic, they were trying to accelerate certain public works projects. It was a pretty well-written email. And I go, the name sounds familiar, and I saw that one of my account reps was copied on. And the person who was copied, Benny, it made sense that he was copied because he lives only a few towns over, and he has political connections in that county. So it actually made sense for him to be the one copied. And so I responded, but they didn't ask me to do anything. They were trying to lull me off my, you know, take me off guard. I responded, yes, we're interested. What's the next step? And 15 minutes later, I got a response. And it said, here, all you have to do is fill out, they sent me a Word document. Here's, you know, fill out this information sheet, please email it back to us, and then we can send you a link to the next step in the process. And now all of a sudden the alarm bells went off. And if you can't guess why, it's because I got a response from a government employee in 15 minutes. and I said, okay, so I go online and I check out the city's list of people. Yes, this is the purchasing manager. Called up my rep. Did you get this email? Do you know this person? Yes, I know him. I go, is this real? Because they want me to click on the document and I can't reach him. I had already called the number and the message was, we are working from home or we're working remotely, or leave a message, somebody will get back to you. I left a message. Everything looked right, but I said, I don't want to click on a document. This is a Word document. They can embed viruses in Word documents and in PDFs. So we started calling around to our connections within the city, and they said, he retired about 3 weeks ago. That's not our domain. He never sent the email. And the person who was copied, that's not the assistant to the purchasing manager. That's her name, but that's not her email address. So they knew that me and Benny were the two people to reach out to. They copied the city logo. They emailed us. And all they were trying to do was to get me to click. And that Word document may not have had a virus. It might have been the next step. But there was the syntax wasn't quite as good on the second email. Remember, that first email had been sitting in my account for hours before the time I saw it and got to it and responded to it. And the fact that they responded so quickly when I replied is what made me suspicious. It was something as innocuous as somebody in person, an email that knew that we do government work, that we've done government work with the city, that knew the person who might be connected. And that could have been because they had hacked the city's email system. I don't know. We alerted the city. The name of the retired purchasing manager has been taken off of their website. They're going through the motions to see if their systems were hacked. But it's so easy to impersonate people. This could have been a real email. It could have really come from their domain.
Yeah, I think years ago we've all been used to seeing like these really crappy looking emails that maybe came from overseas and aren't in proper English, and it's pretty easy to spot a fraud. It's not easy to spot a fraud anymore. It will look like it's coming, often even from someone within a transaction you're working on, and it looks like something you're not going to maybe expecting it's coming, but it looks like something you might have got. No, open this document, but something's going to be a little off. Something's going to be not quite right. And you have to make that call, as annoying as it is. I know Matt says in his company, they call each other all day long. And it sounds like there's a lot of very clever fraudsters out there. And they're obviously starting to take advantage of the fact that most people aren't even in their offices now. And there's that much more leeway they have in tricking folks into thinking that they are the legitimate source. Matt, what steps have you seen during the pandemic that have differed and maybe given the fraudsters some advantage?
Best people don't have their same, number one, they can't just shout down the hall or walk over to somebody's desk to ask. So they have distractions. They're working at home. They have family. They have pets. They have the refrigerator. And they are just not taking they're not taking the normal precautions because they're getting emails from people who would normally have just picked up the phone. They may be using a Gmail account because they may be using an AOL. I've seen AOL accounts, believe it or not, recently.
They're less secure because they're not in the office.
That's correct.
Yeah.
They don't have the same firewall protections. And it's just, it really is, when you're not in that office setting, you're just a little bit more, you're just not on your guard as much.
And if you're a successful agent and you're selling big properties, you are a target. And the fraudsters will look for the quote weak link. And not to say that, realtors are the weak link, but often some agents will use a private email account or a Gmail or an AOL, which are much easier to hack than, let's say, some corporation that has all types of cybersecurity in place. So they only need to hack one person in the chain in order to get in and figure it out. The ultimate goal seems to always be, whether they're planting a virus in you and they can control an email, the ultimate goal is always money. And in our real estate transactions, the way the money shows up is if we're representing a buyer on the day of closing, the buyer usually has to send either the title company or the attorney the closing funds to close. The other place the money shows up is when you're selling the property. Hopefully the seller's made some money and a wire is going to be sent to them. So if the fraudsters can somehow get into the circle, the inner circle, they hope to trick the person sending the wire into sending it to the wrong place. And they're incredibly devious. I mean, Matt, didn't you have one where they set up a fake account in the same name almost as the parties that were involved at a similar bank, just like one letter off, and then tried to prey on that? And it looked so authentic, but yet it was completely fraudulent.
This is a flaw in the Fedwire system here in the United States. You don't have the recipient account ID as a control point, meaning that the bank, as long as you have a routing number and an account number, they'll put the money in that account, even if the name on your instructions doesn't match. So we have to count on the fact that we're getting the names right. The example, so everybody understands, I'm going to pretend that the woman's name is Rosemary Johnson. It's made up. Rosemary Johnson has her, she's the seller, and she has her bank account at Bank of America. We get the wire instructions and it says Rosemary Johnson. But we had already received wire instructions. So we wouldn't send the money, my finance team wouldn't send the money until we had gotten the attorney to get his client on the phone to say, why are you sending us new wire instructions for a different account? It was just had been done by email. The actual name on the account was Rosemary Johnson and Son Construction Company. That company had been created 2 days before. The bank account had been set up the day before, and they had standing instructions that when the money was received, to transfer it to several other banks and divide up the funds. The explanation they'd given to Bank of America was that we're going to be receiving deposit monies, but we have to pay our subcontractors with that money to get the work started. So they had valid explanations for why a brand new account that shouldn't have any money in it was going to receive a large wire and then immediately transfer the money out to 4 other companies, which they had also set up. And then, of course, that money would be spread around the globe and divided up and disappear within hours or days, because those accounts, I'm sure, also had were set up just to commit the fraud, and they had standing wire instructions overnight. They receive money, they need to divide it up and send it out. This is how it works.
The point is that they're very resourceful and clever, the fraudsters, because they can fail 1,000 times, and if they hit once, they've scored. It makes it all worth it. All they have to do is trick one person who isn't paying attention. Just yesterday, it actually happened this morning, I got the call. My client was supposed to get a wire. Let's call her Mary Smith. And the property was actually owned in Mary A. Smith, LLC. Now, she filled out the wire instructions. And by the way, the only time we ever accept or give wire instructions is we have them accompany a deed in a notarized format in an original document. So they should be authentic. However, my client made a mistake. She just wrote Mary Smith. She didn't write Mary A. Smith, LLC. And it was over $1 million, so it was probably a red flag wire to start with. Well, the wire got rejected as a potential fraud, which is, like Matt said, they don't always do that, but in this case they did. Unfortunately, in this case, it was authentic. The client just didn't write her name exactly correct. But so, the fraud departments are trying to look out for anything suspicious, but they're not perfect, and these wires can get through. I know an example where a client was called at the last minute by a mortgage company, and she was told, you have to wire the money right now or you're not going to close. She said, oh my God, I better wire the money. And she wired it right away. And it appeared it was going to her mortgage company or wherever it was, but it wasn't. It was just a name that was similar. And she lost the money. I'm not quite sure if she got that back. We've had other situations where attorneys were duped. And in that situation, it was a paralegal working from home on a Gmail or AOL account who got hacked. But you only need to hack one person in the chain to get the prize, which is redirecting those wired funds.
So we're going to be tackling this. Right before this webinar started, I spent an hour on a new software add-on that our company is rolling out. And it's similar to what the banks do. They have portal systems. If you get a loan, let's say with a Wells Fargo, they're going to have you establish a username and password, and you can log in at any time and retrieve documents, see the status of your file. So we're going to be rolling this out over the next few weeks and use it more and more extensively because, as I explained to my staff, email is dying. It's everybody has to worry about whether it's real. And it may be coming from the real sender. Man in the middle attacks is when somebody's email system is hacked and they're sending it out directly from somebody's email account, but that person doesn't know it. And they're attaching fake documents. So just the way the banks do it, law firms and title agencies will be adopting their own portal systems. So you will register, you'll have access to all your files, certain documents within those files, wire instructions for our title agency or whatever title agency is involved, title binders, CDs, anything with personal information. The days of emailing copies of IDs or social security numbers has to end, and I think it is in the process of ending. Most banks require us to log into portals now to retrieve any information or documents. And the rest of us are going to have to do the same thing.
Yeah, in 2006, not really having cybersecurity in mind, I created a website portal for my firm where we've always hosted our online information for clients, and they always have to log in. And they used to really, and some of them still do, why do I have to log in? Why do I have to have a password? Well, there's a reason. It's everything we're talking about this morning, because there is fraud out there. So, the takeaway, I think, for agents is to be very cautious and careful about each and every email. And as far as, you're the first professional usually that a buyer or seller contacts when they're starting this process. And whenever I have my first call with my clients, I tell them this right up front. There's going to come a time where you're going to have to wire me money. And remember my voice, and remember my paralegals, and speak to us and talk to us about those instructions. Sometimes I even give them the last 4 digits up front, or we talk, we give information along the way, because it's so critical. So as agents, if you're speaking to clients too, say, there's going to be a point where you're going to have to wire money, or there's going to be a point where you're going to be receiving money. Be very careful about how that information is transferred to you with the wiring instructions. And so a lot of people say, well, why can't we bring checks? We really can't use checks anymore. And checks are a problem because there are fake checks out there too. And we have a higher risk accepting a check that could potentially be fake than a wire. Also, people expect things to move at the speed of light. When you get a closing done, they're calling every 5 minutes, where's my wire? Where's my wire? We, as settlement agents, as title companies, attorneys, can't take checks into our account and then write on them immediately. We have to somehow get them to the bank, deposit them, and if they're certified, not necessarily wait till they clear, but they have to be credited to the account. So wires solve all those problems, and wires are the way that things will continue to happen. We just need to perfect a system where buyers aren't accidentally wiring things to the wrong place because they were duped into that by a fraudster. So if you can assist with that on day one, just planting the seed that this industry is fraught with fraud and is targeted by these fraudsters. That's, to me, the biggest takeaway I think as an agent you could have right now, is warning folks and doing the best you can to be cautious of your email back and forth with your customers, with anybody involved in a real estate deal. Matt, you have anything else to add to that?
No, it really is about being careful and taking your time.
Yeah.
And thinking about your processes.
Now, this webinar, everyone who's logged on, you might notice that there's a question and answer tab and a chat tab. If you want to go on the Q&A tab anytime and ask us questions, we can do them in real time if that's possible, or certainly at the end of this program, we'll look at all the questions and answer them as they come in. So that's one advantage of being on today. All right, so the second part of our talk today has to do with website. So as a real estate lawyer, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I actually had been in a number of different industries surrounding real estate since I was very young. And that's because my dad also was a real estate attorney. So my very first job was a title searcher. And then I went to law school. I was a finance major, and I became a mortgage loan officer on the side just to make some money to understand that industry. Around the same time I got licensed as an attorney, I was licensed as a realtor. Now, I never really acted as a realtor. I've done probably about 7,000 closings and maybe about 7 real estate deals, but I always had access to MLS, which is incredibly helpful, because when I get a new deal, I typically look at about 4 different websites before I even open the file or have a conversation with the client. And we're going to take you through most of them, but one of them is MLS. We also look at state websites. We also sometimes, I don't typically look at it, but if I need to, all the title search records that I was accustomed to doing when I was a kid going to the county are typically available online. So we're going to take a look at those. One of the things I mentioned earlier, there's a big part of my practice, is flood zones and waterfront development. There are incredibly detailed sites online that the DEP has out and that the federal government partners with that will allow me to do research and analyze information about flood zones and about waterfront development. And then there are also great tax sites that we look at that can give us a lot of information about a piece of property. So I'm going to do my best now to screen share, and we're going to jump over hopefully to the first of these sites. Let me make sure I have this right. We'll start here with this one. Okay. All right, so the first site that we're going to take a look at is called the Open Public Records Search System. So when you're going to find this site, you type in mod 4, and you see it right there in the middle, mod and then Roman numeral 4 and NJ, and this will inevitably come up. This is actually run by the Monmouth County Clerk. If you see the little seal there, it's Monmouth County Clerk. And fortunately, this is just a fantastic database for agents to use, for anyone involved in real estate, because it has the entire state organized by county, by town. You can search by the street address, the owner's name, or the block and lot. There's only one thing about this site that isn't perfect, and that is, unfortunately, a couple years ago, Ocean County decided that they were not going to be a part of this site. So instead of having 21 counties that we can scroll through, you'll notice that Ocean should be right here and it's missing. So unfortunately, I do a lot of work in Ocean County, and I have to jump over and go to the special Ocean County tax site in order to utilize and look up anything. So if you wanted to look at something in Monmouth County, does anyone on the list want us to look something up? We can just pick a random town like Eatontown and pick a random block and lot like block 1, lot 2, and that's probably someone's block and lot. I'm not picking on anyone. Oh, it's not too bad. Let's try block 2, lot 5. Oh, no one there either. I should have researched this better. But Matt, you want to be a part of this?
Yes, I'm checking out some answers of questions that were just typed to me. I'm checking with my
Oh,
IT
you got some
director.
answers? Oh, cool.
I want to get some real answers.
Oh, okay, I got you. So I would do my own, but I live in Ocean County. So Matt, can we look you up on here?
Sure. And
Just to illustrate.
We got to put in the town Little Silver.
Okay. And then we'll put in, you can do it by just last name, and we'll take a peek and see. These are all the properties in Little Silver owned by someone named Cohen. And the nice thing about this, if you click on this, it gives you a lot of information. I've used this all the time. I go to something called the property card, and that gives you a little bit of information about the property. So it will tell you not only taxes, but there's actually drawings that the assessor uses to determine how they're going to assess a property. So they will give you square footage, they will give you a basic layout of the property and size and assessment. So it's an incredible tool when you're first looking at a piece of property to gain information. You know, I had a problem on a deal not too long ago, and we weren't sure why, if this was going to be assessed as a single family or if it had a garage apartment. And right now we're not even able to touch the folks, but they'll give you a copy of the tax assessor's card. So it's really an amazing bit of knowledge and information that's just on this one little site. We can also go back and look at purchase price, we can look at history, we can look at annual assessments back almost sometimes 7 or 8 years and see how assessments have progressed over time. Sometimes we need to isolate and know, just the improvement, and you can see if a new house was built by seeing when the improvement went up over time. So this is a great site, and unfortunately, like I said, the whole state except Ocean County. But there is an Ocean County site, which is actually a decent site. If you go on there, you can get similar information. It's just not one solid place.
And I used this yesterday to help confirm my suspicions that somebody was trying to engage in a fraudulent transaction, because there was a loan officer and a mortgage broker involved. The broker thought the purchase price and loan amount was much smaller than the loan officer told me when they reached out to me. And that I went online and saw that the assessment and a very recent sale only a year ago was at a much lower price. Went online to look at images, current images of the property from Google Maps and the surrounding properties. The price point was out of line. So I think that I was told it was an investor that was fixing it up and reselling it, but it still didn't make sense. I did do a follow-up call with an email to the municipal clerk, who put me in touch with the building department. No permits have been taken out. I found old images online, no recent work done on the outside of the property. It was strictly, they were going to try and, they found my company online. There were some red flags at the very beginning. And just by looking, the pricing didn't make any sense. So just interesting that I was able to use Mod 4 to verify my suspicions.
And if you need more than Mod 4, you can go to each county's website. So as you can see, this is the one that's run by Monmouth County, but most counties in the state have a searchable website. Matt would actually have probably a better inventory of that than I do. I typically operate in Monmouth and Ocean. Sometimes we do a little bit of work in North Jersey, Mercer County, and a little bit north of here, maybe Middlesex and Somerset. But for the most part, I'm in Monmouth and Ocean. Both counties have decent websites, and they're searchable. They're searchable by name. If you don't know the name, they're searchable by block and lot. Block and lot is easy to get because if you go to our Mod 4 site, you can search by address, and that will give you the block and lot. Also, if you're on your Flex MLS, you can see the block and lot typically listed there right on the home page, or you can jump over to Realist and take a look at the block and lot. It's not a perfect system, the block and lot. It's pretty good though, and you can just pick the municipality here, called Snack. You pick a block and lot, and then you pick a range, and it will show you every document, whether it's a deed, a mortgage, an easement, a sheriff's sale notice for a list pendants. These will all appear. This is the county clerk's records. I mean, it's kind of amazing. This is what the title searchers typically are searching when they're doing your title search now, because especially now, they're not even going into the county clerk's offices on a daily basis, except as needed. And it varies by county, but you're getting to see pretty much the same information that title companies can see for the most part. Is that accurate, Matt?
Well, no, Monmouth County, for instance, has a separate system that's different from the public portal. It's more extensive in terms of documents.
Okay.
So it's not exactly the same, but we do use these. I mean, not all counties have made these systems available to outside the building. And some counties don't let searchers in at all right now. Mercer and Camden and Ocean are a problem. We can't get in. So we're dependent on public sites.
So, sometimes there is a problem with the neighboring property. And look, I'm not encouraging agents to become title experts, but there are things you can jump on and check and see and document your file if you need to. Also, obviously, feel free, if you find one of these documents and want to know what it means, to give us a call here in the office. During the pandemic, we've either been here each day or one person's been here, or if you call our main number, 747-8300, you'll get us no matter what, if it's during the work week. But again, great website. I use it all the time. The next site that I end up going to, not every day, but let's see, this is one I go to every day. Let's go to this one. This is my Region 2 coastal site. And this is a FEMA site where FEMA has partnered with another company, but it's honestly just a fantastic site. It's got the same information that everyone is looking at. Now, some of the engineers will go to the actual map, but you really don't need to do that. If you go to that site and go to the county and look at the preliminary firm viewer, you can see exactly where the flood zones are. And it's the one feature which, when I did my flood seminar, I went over this, but it's worth mentioning again because it's really an interesting technology point. If you go into this area here and you put in an address, and I'll use my own, so I'm not picking on anyone. And it's also a very nice cross section of flood zones. it'll bring you to that site. Now, one of the things you as an agent have an advantage of is you've seen this property before. So you can look at an aerial and you can understand that, yeah, this is definitely the property. Because the only reservation I have about these sites is that sometimes they don't take you to the exact house. Sometimes it's the house next door. But you hopefully you know, though, that no, this house is 3 in from the corner, or you know what the roof line looks like and you can pick it. So here's what I really like about this site. What I do on this site is I first come out here and I kind of open the playing field by taking all the layers off. So I can just see the houses and see a nice satellite image, okay? And then I go to this little feature here, which says, or sometimes I'll even zoom in a little, and it's telling me this is the property. And that's true, pretty good. I use this little feature here, a pointer, and I can go and actually point right at the house. And then I hit run. And what it's going to do is it's going to produce a document which you can then put in your file, email to your clients, and say, look, this is what the FEMA site is showing for this property. And I'm not going to get too into it now because it's about technology, not flood zones, but there are 2 sets of maps. And this lays out both sets of maps. The effective set, which is rating insurance, and the preliminary sets, which rates building. And it gives you a nice little document that we're about to see where you can, assuming you did that right with dropping the dot, you can see that you're in this particular zone or this zone under the preliminary, and you can print this out, you can save it as a PDF, and now you've really have a step up, I think, on a lot of other folks who aren't sure about certain things and say, look, that's the zone you're in. You can even scroll around a town once you're in this site and notice that certain areas aren't in flood zones. So it's a fantastic resource, which I really do use this one almost every day. Whenever I get a new property, unless I know it's up on a hill in a town not near the shore, this is the site I'm going to see if I'm in a flood zone, to see if it's something where I have to take the next step and get a flood elevation certificate. So, and let's see, do we have any questions regarding Matt? Did you want to circle back? You have a couple questions you want to answer? You ready for that?
No, I'm waiting for my IT director to give me the right answers. He's not responding. He must be dealing with an issue.
All right, so the next site that, again, perfect for waterfront development, this is called New Jersey GeoWeb. I mean, the information on this site is just hard to comprehend how much data and maps they have. I pulled this one up, but if you click on Launch Web from this profile, this site's a little slow, but it's got just, again, amazing information. Click on this Launch profile, you'll come to here. And then you can go into this search category. Now, I learned years ago when I first started using this from a wise attorney that the best way to search on this site is using block and lot. That for some reason the DEP does a great job rather than picking a address, which might not be perfect. If you go by block and lot, the DEP is pretty good on that. So I searched by block and lot. You just pick the town, and you can go in here. You pick the town and the block and lot. Look, my session is expired, so we'll restart it. The DEP site's a little tricky, but let's work with it because this is great information that you can get. In the lectures we do about flood and waterfront development, one of the tricky things we need to know about are docks. A lot of docks don't have permits. And when you come across a dock that doesn't have a permit, the seller says, oh, it's been there forever. It's grandfathered in. That might be true, but it might not be true. So one of the things we can learn on this site is we can learn if the dock was there on the 1977 Tidelands map, which predates the 1980 requirement of being grandfathered. So if I go into this search by block and lot, and then I just have to pick my county, which I'll pick Ocean, my municipality, which I'll pick my municipality, and I'm going to go with block 7, lot 12 for me, and we'll search that. And it takes about a second to come up, but it will show us a picture of that lot on a map, which is great. Now, we have to decide what information we want. Now, if you scroll through this, and I'm not going to go look at many of these, but take a look at the categories we have here. I mean, you can look at the fish index of biotic integrity, brownfield developments where auto body shops are. They have a whole list of dry cleaners, gas stations, schools. I mean, it's really a wealth of information, as many of these sites are. This is the wetland and pineland section. Um, be cautious about, don't try to be an engineer here. This is just a way to gather interesting information. I'll give you an example with wetlands. You don't want to look at a wetland map and see that there are no wetlands there and then take the jump and assume that means there are no wetlands, because that means there are no mapped wetlands perhaps, but it doesn't mean that the property is free of wetlands, because wetlands maps are only to show maps of areas that have already been designated as wetlands. That doesn't mean there's been an LOI done and this area has been determined not to be wetlands. But look, airports, railroad stations, there's just so much information. If you're bored, you're looking for something to do, this is a great site. But now we're getting into the area that I was talking about, and this has to do with the Tidelands base map. So here's the 1977 Tidelands base map. We're going to click on that, and it's going to give us black and white aerial imagery of this area. Now, there are other sites out there that might show you historical aerial footage. However, this is the site that you can use to convince the DEP that you're right, because you're using their map. So what we would look at, and this is a cross-section of Manalocan here, is we'd look at these docks, and you do have the ability to move. It's a little bit hard. It's not the easiest way to go, but let's say I want to go a little bit west here. So I center that dock right there on my screen. And then I'm going to scroll. I'm going to go in a little bit. I'm going to take this and I'm going to try to get even a little bit closer. All right, so that's a pretty good shot of this dock right here. And then I would probably go over and use my snipping tool and cut out a picture of this dock. And then I would get a 2020 survey and make sure that the dock that was listed on the 2020 survey is the same size and shape as the one we see here in the 1977 aerial. So that's just one of many things you can do as an agent who's working in these areas, going to this geo website. That's just one, like I said, of many things, but it's one that I happen to pick up on and use quite often, because we're always looking at the legitimacy of docks. And again, that's just New Jersey GeoWeb. If you Google that, it's run by the New Jersey DEP, and it's not the easiest site to use, but you will figure it out. And again, searching by block and lot is really a great idea. There are other ways to search, and they work as well, but the block and lots seem to work really well. So we looked at tidelands and wetlands there. The other thing that we need to know about, and this is true more than ever in the era of no one being in their office, and unfortunately, these requests, these Oprah requests that we do, are not working as quickly as we hoped they would. There's actually, I think, a government order that extended the typical 7-day turnaround to 15 days. At least that's what the DEP and the towns are telling us. So this is an online Oprah request. If you Google online Oprah, Oprah stands for, of course, the Open Public Records Act. So whenever we're working on a file, again, this comes into play a lot with the waterfront work I do, you can go to the Oprah site and you can fill out this form right online, and they get you an email back immediately and say, thank you for your request. It's in the queue. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. They usually get back to you, within a week or two, but you can't guarantee it. This section, you just have to put your name in. You're the requester. You can be a resident or non-resident, but they want to know all your information. In fact, at the end, you have to certify that you haven't been convicted of a crime. They want to make sure that there are not criminals trying to get this information. And of course, if you had, you would always say that you would fess up and say that you had. I'm kidding, of course. So this section here, you need to go down. If you have a facility, and again, a lot of the stuff I'm searching is just residential, so it's not necessarily a facility or operator, and they don't always need this information, but what they do need is they need the county, they need the type of permit you're looking for, and they need the block and lot. You need to know the address and block and lot. This is a really important section to fill out. And the property description, it'll either be commercial or residential or other. So you just have to go piece by piece, go down. Yeah, have you ever been convicted of a indictable crime? I suppose if you have, maybe they wouldn't give you the requested documents, but I don't know. And then you submit it. So it's relatively simple form, but knowing that it's there, utilizing it, getting this information. Maybe you just got a new listing, and you want to make sure that you're ahead of the curve when it comes time to ask these questions. So you submit your open request on day one. So when we get into attorney review, you have all these documents because perhaps your client misplaced them or didn't have them. This is especially true when we're talking about permits for waterfront development, waterfront structures, docks, piers, bulkheads, even pools and homes that had to be built and needed a CAFR permit. But anything at all relating to the DEP, if perhaps there was, this comes up a lot when we're dealing with underground oil tanks. Sometimes you'll talk to a client and they'll say, well, yeah, we had a tank and we took it out. Well, okay, there was a cleanup, but it's all been done. Well, where's the NFA letter, the no further action letter that the DEP issues? I don't know, I lost it. Well, can we get it from your town? Maybe. Each town typically has an OPRA site too, where you can go online and request it. But town records aren't perfect, and neither is the DEP's. Sometimes they only go back a certain number of years. Often, along some of the shore towns, lost documents during Sandy. Others lost documents during other fires or problems they've had over the years with record keeping. So it's often best to go to both sources. You go to the municipality and you go to the DEP. But this site, along with other municipal, there's 565 municipalities in New Jersey. Most of them have a site you can do this, not all of them. But familiarize yourself with the ones in the town you're working in. And on day one, it doesn't take more than 5 minutes to fill these forms out and get them going. And then you'll be getting all this documentation in. Because when I get the file, we're already at a point where we have an anxious buyer, we have a seller who wants to sell, and we don't have a lot of documents. So as attorneys, we now have to create contingencies in a contract for documents we don't have. And that's unfortunate because that could lead to buyer's remorse or other problems. If we can solve all those problems on day one, because we have the paper trail of documents, we're really ahead of the curve, and you're standing out as an excellent agent who has got all this documentation ready so we can sail through attorney review and everybody's happy. If we got these folks early on in the process, and I do encourage agents that I work with, if you're working with anyone who has an oil tank, who has a property on the water, get them to us sooner than later. I'm happy to speak with them in preparation for a sale that might not be coming for months, so we can get all this paperwork in order when a buyer comes along, we're ready to go and we don't hit a bump in the road. Okay. See other sites we want to talk about. We talked about flood. So one of the sites I use, and I know most of you know how to use this, is Flex MLS. And it's a great resource, again, because when I get a file, I look at it, I look at the section. Let's do a quick search. We'll pick, I'm in, my office is here in Shrewsbury, so let's just pick Shrewsbury for fun, just so we can get any listing up here. And so we'll just pick, let's say pick the first house that comes up here. One of the things that I love, and this one has, it's a great example, is this documents button. If there are documents that you have, whether it's a survey, a seller's disclosure, any information that has to do with some of the hot button issues like oil tanks or elevation certificates if you're in a flood zone, if you click on this section here, documents, it will take us to all of the documents that the listing agent has decided to share. I love it when there's stuff in there. On every file I go, I look at this section and I see if there are any documents there. And I think, sometimes this gets overlooked, even by buyer's agents. And then I go in and retrieve these things and say, well, have we seen this? Have you seen this? And it's really helpful getting us through attorney review, because sometimes we're able to, instead of creating contingencies where we have to see this or they represent this, we can see the survey right up front. We can see a copy of that NFA letter or any other important document. where we can go through the seller's disclosure and learn information about the house that I can incorporate into my attorney review. Part and parcel with the Flex MLS is the link that you have to the Real List. Now, this, I guess, serves to some extent like Mod 4 does. It's got different features. It's got these neighborhood profiles and comparables that you can use as an agent, which I think are great. It also will tell you some history of mortgages on the property, just like it does often sometimes on the Mod 4. So you can learn a lot about a property, about its history, about what it was historically assessed for, about what mortgages are on the property, and whether or not, this might be a short sale if mortgages are too high. So I like this site a lot as well. And then the other site that I end up, sometimes going to as a resource, and this has been really good. Well, actually, let's talk about the other thing in Flex MLS that relates. This is the highest and best source for flood stuff, this Region 2 map that we looked at. But if you're in a pinch and you just want to take a peek, there is a feature in, I'm jumping around here, in Flex MLS where you can click on, see, Matt's in my way here, where you can click on map and then you can do some overlays. So if we scroll in a little bit, the overlays, let's say we pick flood, well, you can do imagery parcels, so that breaks it up and you can see the actual, basically it's a version of the tax map where you can see the size of the parcels and the shape of the parcels. So I like that one. I use that often. And then sometimes I'll add the flood zones. Now, this is not a perfect system, but you get a general idea of where these flood zones are located in your area. So if your client says, I want to buy a house that's not in a flood zone, well then, but I really want to be close to the river, then you know that this street is safe over here, but if you bought over here, they would clearly be in a flood zone. So this is a nice kind of rule of thumb map to take a look at. And if you really want the details, then you jump over to the flood map itself, and we add all these layers back in, and you can see with all kinds of clarity exactly what zone you're in and what the old map was, what the new map was. The Flex MLS site is not going to tell you that, but it does give you a nice little idea of where these flood zones exist. Another site I use a lot recently, and I encourage people to do it because it's changing daily, is the New Jersey governor's website. If you just Google New Jersey governors, you'll get a big website. You click on Mr. Murphy, and it will list all his executive orders. So that wasn't really a big deal maybe, but ever since the pandemic started, I think we're around about 100 at that point, he's up to 143 orders. So each time a new one comes out, often I'm reading that order, not just getting like the news clip for what it says, but actually reading the actual order, which are all right here for anyone who wants to take a look at it. And there, of course, will be about 4 pages of whereases because the lawyers have to do their thing, but then you get down to the actual meat of what exactly is happening. And sometimes when you get a report in the paper, and these things affect real estate. We did a whole webinar about how COVID is affecting real estate and what we're needing to do in order to comply. Sometimes you need to dig deep and get in here. And this is some of the things we do as attorneys, but you, if you wanted to, could do that as realtors. The final site I'll mention, we're just getting almost to 1 o'clock here, is the NJ Realtor site. I thought they did a great job. First of all, of course, they have your online forms. Maybe you do your contracts through the site, but it's often a nice idea just to kind of, if you're looking around, look at their government affairs page. They got a great recap of the federal and state and local issues that affect real estate in New Jersey. And they've done a great job, I thought, of putting together a COVID resource. Because when I would go to that COVID resource, it had a nice summary of how the pandemic and the new laws were affecting realtors. And it even had, and we'll go to it right now, it even had a nice little page where you could learn about the unemployment situation, being a real estate agent and what would work. But you could also learn about things that apply to the real estate industry. Can I have an open house? Can I still close? Then they talk about even are there problems with title searches? And there are, but they give good answers on these. Then they talk about the what we can do in order to get a CO, and they give you a link actually to the latest guidance from the DCA. So I was impressed with the NJ Realtors did a good job on this. So I think it's just wise for everyone to be aware of these sites and use them in your daily practice, because a lot of folks are not out and about as much. And, you know, you can really learn a lot by going to these various sites. So,
Brad, we just had a question.
yeah.
Can we get a list of the sites you discussed today? Is that something you'll be
Yeah,
sending them out?
I can do that. Anyone can contact me at brad@bachelor.com, or you can respond to events@bachelor.com, and we'll be happy to share that with you. And Matt, did you have any questions you wanted to get back to folks on, or anything else?
I posted the answers. I'll say it for people who didn't notice.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
The Gmail account, I had two questions. One on the dot loop, which we believe is a secure system for exchanging documents. In fact, we're building out our connectivity directly to dot loop through our software, so we don't have to, so we can exchange documents seamlessly. And the other one was regarding Gmail, since I made a comment that Gmail itself is not that secure, which is not. However, Google will allow you to enable two features which will make it very secure. One is to automatically encrypt emails that you send, and two, to require two-factor authentication for somebody to log into your account. So go on, those features are now available. I'm not sure how long they have been available, but they have been for some time. And I see the director saying everybody should be doing this, otherwise you're putting your information at risk.
Okay, let me see if there's any other questions out there. I don't think we have any other questions. Matt, do you have any parting words to share before we kind of wrap this up?
What
about Apple email?
I don't know about Apple yet, but I will respond to Marguerite later. I would say go to my website if you're looking to see whether you can get a deal done, whether the searching capabilities are there right now in various counties. We have an updated list that we take from the New Jersey Land Title Association, tells you what records are available for county searchers, because some counties are limited on what we can get or how often we get there. So closings can be delayed in a county like Passaic or Camden or Ocean, depending on how far back the current owners have. And and the words of advice would be, as I said earlier, take your time. Is it the email you expected from the person you expected? And it's still okay to pick up the phone or send them a text message. Did you just send me this? Before you click on that link, because the repercussions are just so high if you don't.
Yeah, it's great advice. The cybersecurity stuff is very, very scary stuff. And, you know, Matt's done a great job trying to scare us all. I know he's been scaring me about this stuff for years. But really, even as agents, you have to be very cautious and guide your clients too. Let them know they may be getting into a new world that they weren't aware of, and people are out to find their email, find out who they are, caution them about what we discussed today about not opening any emails with attachments, because it's the same thing. All they need is one person in the chain. And of course, just a buyer or seller of property, who knows what their level of sophistication is. They could be the target because they know they have a house for sale or whatever it is, and they just stumble upon it. And then all of a sudden, the goal is to get back to us as attorneys or title agents or mortgage company to somehow set up some type of fraud system to encourage them to wire the money to the wrong place. So thanks again for joining in. We'll be back next Wednesday with another new topic. We'll be talking about taxes and their impact on real estate. So appreciate everyone logging in, and let your colleagues know that they can find this information on my website at bachelor.com, and our YouTube channel. We'll be posting all the information. So thanks again. Have a good day and good luck.
My email address, people still there, is mcohen@tworiverstitle.com. Somebody just asked me for that. So.
And thanks again for Matt for being here today. I think it was incredibly helpful to learn all the scary stuff that's out there and giving us good advice on how to protect ourselves. All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Brad.